Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sarah Macias. I am the co-director of the Green Seminary Initiative, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join us for our Eco-Public Leadership webinar. Today, we have three esteemed scholars in our field who will engage in a conversation around the importance of a school's leadership in the integration of its ecological commitment. In a moment, I will introduce our panelists, but first I'm glad to have as our co-facilitator, Laurel Kearns, co-founder of the Green Seminary Initiative and associate professor of sociology of religion and environmental studies at Drew Theological School. Today's webinar is the fifth and final of our series organized around the 5 focus areas of GSI. These focus areas also present the framework for the standards that guide our new seminary environmental certification program, which we will say more about at the end of the hour. If you've missed either of the first 4 webinars, you can also find a link to a recording on our Facebook page or our website. But before we get started, there are just a few housekeeping items. As you get a chance to see the mission statement on our screen, please be sure that your lines are on mute unless you are speaking. Like others in this series, this webinar is being recorded for us to share it with others later, and muting will help to ensure good sound quality. For the first half of our hour, Laurel will be guiding the conversation with our panelists, and there will be time for us to field your questions in the second half. Just select the questions and answer box on your screen at any time and text your questions about what any of our panelists say, or anything that you have to ask about any of the topic areas that we're going to cover today. Under the topic of eco-public leadership, we will talk to our panelists specifically about the importance of environmental mission statements in embracing publicly your school's commitment to creation. We'll also discuss how a school's ecological commitment can be integrated into its culture through environmental policies and board and governance leadership. Finally, how can our schools model environmental engagement in the public square as an expression of religious belief and practice? So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our panel. Along with Laurel and myself, we have Gail O'Day, Dean and Professor of New Testament and Preaching at Wake Forest School of Divinity, and we're also thrilled to have Javier Rivera, Dean of the Theological School at Drew University, which serves as our home base for the Green Seminary Initiative. Dean Vieira, we thank you for that support. So Laurel, let's go ahead and get started.
Well, I want to start off first by thanking our 2 panelists for rescheduling and to acknowledge that our webinar was rescheduled to honor all of our participants' observation of the day without a woman on March 8th. Thank you for finding a new date so quickly, and thank you for that commitment. But I also want to thank you for your long-time commitment to the Green Seminary Initiative. I've gone to both of you for guidance and leadership and have always known that your support is there for our efforts. So it's an honor to have you with us. I'm going to address sort of the general question and then give each of you a chance to respond. So Dean O'Day and Dean Vieira, in what ways has your school integrated an ecological commitment into your mission statement and policies and governance? And a note for our listeners, we understand ecological commitment to include eco-literacy, creation care, and issues of environmental and eco-justice. That's a mouthful to say each time, so I sort of take a shorthand, but I just want to acknowledge the kind of breadth that's involved in this work. I want to also address how your school institutionalizes that commitment and communicates it. And what can we learn from the examples, the processes, the challenges, the opportunities that you've had on your campus at Wake Forest or Drew, or maybe that you've talked with others about or observed? So, Dean O'Day, would you like to go first?
I can. I'm happy to. And I think I'm going to start with the latter part of your question rather than the former part of the question, which is about the ways of institutionalizing the commitment and communicating it internally and externally rather than the mission statement. Although I think the mission statement is an important topic, but we didn't start there. We started the other way. And so I think I'd rather start with the institutional, how to institutionalize. If that's okay, Laura.
That's why I put those two questions together, knowing that they were all integrated and you might want to start in different places. So no problem.
Thank you. Well, I think one thing might also be, how do we land on this in the first place as an institutional commitment? And in many ways, we landed on it in the first place as an institutional commitment because both students and faculty and staff were drawn to it as something that was of ever increasing importance and urgency for educating religious leaders and for being an essential part of theological education. And so if you listen to students and what really gets them animated, this is one of those topics. And it crosses kind of every line. And it can be, some students' point of entry may be they love the outdoors. Some students' point of entry may be on the eco-justice side, environmental racism, ecological degradation and the effect on public health. And when you start lining out all those different aspects, you realize that's the array of public engagements that we hope our students are equipped to lead on after they graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we came to it that way. And we've institutionalized it in a variety of ways by, well, what was I just reading in the paper, since we're in budget season in Washington, D.C., by dedicating budget lines to the topic. And that, what did I just read? Budgets are moral documents and they tell you your priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a little bit of, that's like a mission. You know, it fits with our larger mission of kind of through public engagement and creative courses, which is not limited to this set of public engagement and creative courses, but it's one of the ways. And then starting from there, so it fit our larger mission statement, which we talk about educating students to be, equipping them to be agents of justice, reconciliation, and compassion. And that doesn't just mean with one another, that also means with non-human parts of creation. So it fit with our larger mission statement. So in some ways we didn't have to redo our mission statement, although it wouldn't hurt to, you know, I would be opposed to making it even more explicit, but we've made it more explicit in other places, particularly in the curriculum. That we had done a lot of redoing of our curriculum to make this, I mean, one of the questions down here is not just to have classes on the environment, but it's really an across the curriculum requirement. And so that the way in undergrad you used to have writing across the curriculum, here we have really ecology across the curriculum, sustainability across the curriculum. So that people in Bible, in theology, in ethics, in some of the practices of ministry will have classes on it. We've done just last year was one of the main changes, and then this fall also, and it relates to that mission statement of how do you make students be agents of justice, reconciliation, and compassion for today, is that we've redone the way that we talk about the practices of ministry to instead of requiring individual classes, say for pastoral care, we have articulated a requirement called relational care. And students can pick from an array of classes in relational care, and the definition of that area explicitly articulates that it's also that relationality includes non-humans.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm.
And so that is one of the ways that for a practice of ministry, it's articulated. And then we also put in place requirements that cut across, we call them area requirements for want of a better title. We don't have curricular areas. So it's an open term for us. And students have to take, every MDiv student has to take one class in gender and sexuality, one in race and class, one in religious pluralism, and one in health, science, and ecological sustainability. So you can't not find it. So rather than maybe it being in the mission statement, it's in multiple places in curricular requirements.
That's wonderful. And I think that's a good place to pause and turn to Dean Vieira, and we'll come back to some more questions and stuff. So Dean Vieira.
Yes, I want to say that much of what Dean O'Day has said resonates with our work here at Drew. It's actually quite similar, quite complementary. But I am going to start with the mission statement, in part because shortly after I came here in 2014 as dean, we as a faculty committed to revisiting our mission and began a process that was a year-long process that involved multiple retreats, but that really, what more than anything, really engaged us in some fundamental conversations about what is it that we're committed to as a faculty, and what is it that we want our students to be equipped to do, and how they are equipped to lead once they leave here. And among the changes from our prior statement to the one we currently have, besides the fact that it was reduced in length considerably to a much more succinct statement, was that it ends with the words that Drew University Theological Schools empowers creative thought and courageous action to advance justice, peace, love of God, neighbor, and the earth. And this might sound small, those last three words, and the earth, but if you think about the biblical summary of the law, this addition of it to include "and the earth" expressed an innovation, if you will, but it was an innovation that we felt was quite faithful to the original summary of the law, and that not only is faithful to it, but expresses who we are as a school and as a community, and the ends to which we want to be leaders, both as faculty and as students, along issues pertaining to the earth and to the environment and to eco-justice and eco-theology. But then we also recognize that we were part of a long legacy, and so that this statement was really an articulation of something that had already existed far before we sat down to pen it. And Laurel and others have been leaders on this university for many years along these lines. And so that this statement was not only capturing our reality, but also captured a way in which we have been leaders on this campus to translate mere words into action and into policies and governance here at the university. And so among the ways in which that has taken place here at Drew, and I think it's something that we're quite proud of, is that, you know, Drew was one of the universities that signed the university president's climate commitment, which has seen a reduction here at Drew of our emissions up to 25%. Sustainability is central and included in our strategic plan as a university. Drew is nicknamed the Forest, and one of the things that we are very aware of at all times is that the work that we do, the way in which we engage our theological and ethical commitments take place in this amazingly beautiful environment that we call the forest. And from the day students set foot on this campus, that's pointed out to them. They begin to touch the earth. They walk the forest. And so among the things that many years ago, Laurel and others led this university, and that the Board of Trustees and the president at the time supported, was that this should in fact be a forest. And so that on this campus now, only native plants and trees are planted and grow on this campus. We had our board founded what they call the Green Revolving Fund, which was established so that the board could help finance green efforts across the university. Our dorms going forward are all, LEED dorms, and the Student Center itself is also a LEED center. We have energy efficient lighting all across campus. I'll be in meetings regularly in my office. The lights will just go out because the motion sensors have detected that I haven't moved in a while. And while that can be frustrating and awkward, it gives me an opportunity to remind guests in my office about why that's there, and to articulate our commitment to this method of energy efficiency and conservation. The building itself, when we redid the building itself contains energy efficient lighting, motion detectors, eco carpeting, low water use bathrooms. Across the campus, our university president is planning on banning water bottles from the campus. It hasn't happened yet, but she is committed to it. But part of why that's possible is because our faculty and students over the years have been instrumental in installing water stations, water filling stations across the campus. And when students arrive on campus at orientation, they're gifted with a water bottle. And there's actually no excuse and no reason for anyone to need on this campus bottled water, because everywhere you go, most buildings have a place where you can fill that.
I'm going to just pause there for a moment, because I think some of the questions will let you come back. But just, I don't know, Gail, if that provoked any ideas for you, but one of the other parts of this environmental engagement, and you've already spoken some about, but how does Wake Forest or Drew support its students and other members of the seminary community in addressing environmental concerns publicly? And how have you been perhaps public leaders on this? It's a real honor to have Dean speaking to us, because you are in a different place of representing your institutions and leading your institutions than those in the faculty and others we've spoken to. So I want to just invite you to speak from that space also. Gail, any thoughts?
Yes, on which do you want to start with, students or public?
You know, I'm one of those circle people that want people to start where they want to start.
All right. I think it's funny that Wake Forest is also called the Forest.
Oh, that's great.
That?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And we'll have the forest.
I was like, wow, I think they thought they were unique by calling themselves the Forest in the name, but it was a town name. And it wasn't, the town name is not where the current campus is. It was in another part of North Carolina. So it moved that name with it, but this campus is, yes, also very, very tree laden and quite lovely. And so a lot of the things that you said about that resonate quite strongly. And we were one of our program, and we started it with as a program in food, because that was, I used to kind of jokingly refer to it as the gateway drug to sustainability, because it enabled people to come at it from a variety of different places and a variety of different needs. And then before you know it, you're talking about everything. Because food scarcity is environmentally connected, and the appropriate food abundance is environmentally connected, and the mention of water and water bottles is also environmentally connected. And I think it gave both students and faculty and the community a practical way in that they could actually see. And as is often the case with environmental and sustainability questions, it could have a sense that, okay, what I'm doing right now is making a difference. And that it's a small drop, but it's still a drop and I can see it, which then helps to, I think one of the questions is to support and empower, to help them feel like, okay, even sometimes when I can't see the difference this is making, because some places I can, I know that it does. We also have water filling stations, and one of my favorite things is to take the pitcher from my office and fill it and see what the count is on how many plastic water bottles it saved.
Pitcher probably is worth 2 bottles.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love of every day. We are a public leader on this in a variety of different ways. One is, as was already mentioned, about the Drew School of Theology on the university campus. I mean, the Office of Sustainability preceded, the university has a sustainability officer and had a sustainability officer before we had our program, but we were one of the first programs at the university that dedicated itself to sustainability. And after that, the university itself has designed a master's in sustainability. And we now have a joint degree with that, so one MDiv, MA in sustainability. So that's one of the ways to publicly support them and while they're students, and then also it gives them appropriate training and for a kind of dual vocationality when they graduate. And we provide a wide array of student internships in this area. I mean, we seek them out for during the year for their contextual education, art of ministry internships, but we also seek them out for them in their summer intensive internships. So we look hard to find and North Carolina is an agricultural state, well, as New Jersey is. And so there are ways to find both environmentally related internships for students. And so we work with them to find ways to place them, which supports, it gives their studies a sense of, oh, I'm going to do something with this. This is going to make a difference because I can feel it already making a difference while I'm a student. And we also help them we've had very good luck with first job placements for graduates working in sustainability related, often faith-based sustainability related, but placements. So that I think of them as the students, the graduates, students and graduates, as kind of crossing the frontier for the rest of us to what they'll be doing and how we'll need them to be doing it. So that's one of the ways that we support environmental engagement for students in the public square. And for ourselves, we have a wide array of partnerships, not only across the university, but across our community. So that this week in Winston-Salem is Creek Week. That's kind of partnered with River Keepers, but it's the Water Creek Awareness Week. And one of our faculty members with someone from a couple other schools in North Carolina are sponsoring the main Creek Week events. So we're one of the main sponsors with other Creek Awareness people in Winston-Salem for doing this. So that helps, that's a certain kind of public leadership, and that also helps religious organizations think, oh, this is something we should be paying attention to. Look who's leading this. It's not just the scientists, it's not just the kind of nature freaks. I mean, say that, you know, in a slangy kind of way. But there are people from all over the place who are participating and supporting this. So that's very important. And then, but with faith-based, the Western North Carolina Association of the United Church of Christ has a huge creation justice program. One of our alums is one of the leaders of it, and they're having their big workshop this upcoming weekend. And lots of our students, alums, and faculty are panelists on it.
That's wonderful.
And that's in it. So that's one of the ways is to reach out to faith-based organizations.
Those are what I love with both of you, and it's a true exemplar of being a leader, is that you see how this is all seamless and integrated. And so the questions, you know, I just want to constantly make space for you to bring in the things that you want. But Javier, what are your thoughts? I can repeat the question if you want, but you
I remember it. And what I would say, Laurel, is that I think for us, the way I would begin to answer it is that the way that we support and encourage our students to lead publicly on these matters begins by the example and the witness of our own community. And so I would say that we begin by first trying to embody the kind of community commitments that we hope that they will then take in their own leadership context. So, for example, we as a school have made a voluntary covenant to limit our meat consumption because of the impact that has environmentally, and also that we always have some sort of vegan option when we have our community meals. At Drew, we eat together a lot, and that's a wonderful thing. But because of that commitment, it also gives us an opportunity to constantly be in conversation and dialogue about that in our building. And we're trying to make this the case campus-wide, but certainly within our building, we have a commitment to serve only fair trade coffee. We drink a lot of coffee. People are here all the time, and they need that. But that's a commitment that we've made. And again, it's a easily translatable commitment beyond this space into a different space. We have, as part of our community habit or commitment, compostable plates, but also reusable cutlery. This was something that our students led, in which every member of the community has their own cutlery set, and rather than always than using plasticware or something that we throw away, the students themselves collect it, they wash it, and they prepare it, and they have it ready for the next time that we gather as a community as a meal. And so it's a commitment and a practice. And I would also say that our chapel becomes almost like a lab space or a laboratory where the worship and the engagement that takes place in that space regularly addresses or expresses environmental concerns and eco-justice concerns. We support our students in going to marches and taking environmental justice tours, or we're so close to New York City that our students regularly go to the UN and are engaged in how environmental issues have an impact on a global scale, and are meeting with leaders around that. One of the curriculum requirements for the MDiv program at Drew is that every student has to participate in a cross-cultural immersion program. And so we have faculty every year who are taking groups of students all over the world to Zimbabwe and Colombia and El Salvador and India, and even here in the United States, a professor who takes students to historic Native American sites. And one of the commitments that we've made as a faculty is that in all of those settings, wherever our students are, a portion of that trip and that immersion experience will be dedicated to environmental and eco-justice concerns, and which means that our students are coming into contact regularly with people who are on the front lines around the globe leading these environmental justice issues. And often that means I can speak personally from the trip that I led with my students to Colombia, that there's a lot of intersectionality that takes place as a result of that, because one of the groups that we met with was a group of women, feminists, who were really focused on issues of land reform and environmental concerns, because they're the ones who are on the front lines of that. And so the conversation is rich, but we see that our students are constantly learning from leaders across the globe who are involved in these kinds of matters.
We also have a cross-cultural immersion requirement for our MDiv students, and because we just finished spring break, one group of students just came back from going out to Arizona, and it was multiple things that they were looking at: Native American, the border. There's a UNESCO World Heritage Site out there, and it was quite an experience for the students and the faculty member who led that trip.
That's what I love. We chose both of you because your schools do so much. And so, I have this list, and you've touched on many of them: curriculum, experiential learning, formation, worship and ritual, community life, institutional practices, buildings and grounds, the kind of 5 focus areas that we're hoping to help schools imagine how, as I think you mentioned, Gail, it's not just the curriculum that's in the classroom, it's the curriculum that's spread throughout the institution and its practices. So I just want to open this space up if either of you on your list or your thinking had any other examples you wanted to share, because I think you're giving all of us a rich imagination of what can be done. But I know both of the schools, and I know there's other things probably too. So I just want to open up the floor. I think I'm doing okay on time, Sarah? Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing well.
Good.
One other area, Laurel, is that we also have quite extensive continuing education or lifelong learning programs in this area. So that if one went to divinity school at a time when this wasn't taught or recognized as a priority, there are still ways in one's active vocational ministry work to engage this in a sustained way. And that works both ways, because they bring us stuff that we can learn from. So that definitely is both directional, the continuing ed pieces of it. That's another way that we can lead publicly and lead in the community, is to provide these offerings. But the bi-directional is that we learn of all kinds of resources, and and activities that are out there in the community that we might not know about if we didn't invite these, have these kinds of events on campus.
And anytime
or off campus, sometimes we go out into the community, because it's often more welcoming not to be on your campus, but where other people are.
That's so true.
And anytime any of that is filmed or can be joined online, the Green Seminary Initiative would love to publicize it, because we know that there are so many clergy and religious leaders out there that are hungry exactly for what they didn't get when they went through theological education. But you're also right that many of them can come back and educate us. Javier, any thoughts?
Well, I would only add, something that I think that Dean O'Day referenced earlier is that at Drew, it's an embarrassment of riches in terms of our curricular offerings, because while we have, one or two faculty who are real, true leaders in this, I can say that across our curricular offerings in Bible and theology and history and in practical theology, in sociology and ethics, we have faculty members who are committed to addressing the issues of environmental concerns and eco-justice. So it's not as if at Drew we simply have a course or two, or just one or two people who are specializing in this, although we do, but it is true across the curriculum. And so students are engaging in these matters constantly. I would also say that we've made a commitment in our student internships and supervised ministry and apprenticeships to make sure that our students have opportunities to have placements, like, for example, with organizations like Green Faith, who are working in churches who want to develop a green ministry. Something that's become very central to our life here is what we call our community garden, where our students are learning in the community, who are planting a garden, but who are also, it becomes a space for teaching and learning. And then what we're hoping is that then becomes a commitment and a practice that they take with them and can serve as resources to parishes who want to do that sort of thing. But it goes beyond just the gardening itself. It also goes that much of the produce, for example, of that garden is donated to a local food pantry, which then connects our students with the concerns and the needs in the local community, and exposes them and educates them on matters of food insecurity and food scarcity in our community. Even though we're in a predominantly wealthy area, there's a lot of need and a lot of exposure that takes place as a result of that. And then lastly, I would say that we're in the process at Drew of a major curriculum transformation process. And that I would say that among the commitments that our faculty have made are commitments to certain issues or concerns or commitments being present across the curriculum. And those include anti-racism, anti-homophobia, and eco-justice. And that is something that is just it grows out of our collective commitments, and not something that is isolated in a selected course here or there. And I think that is, Dean O'Day, you mentioned this earlier, I think that for our students, it's especially important that this feel organic, or that this feel natural to who we are. And one of the things that I think that we're really working at is that in fact happens across our entire shared life here at Drew.
Gail, any last thoughts? I just really want to thank both of you for giving such rich examples. But we might want to open it up to questions and see if that brings up anything more.
We've got
about the food service, it was kind of interesting. One of the things we've done, because at the larger university, one day a week the food service provides us our lunch, rather than we have looked different ways. And they have, we asked them to, and they have piloted a program that they're now using for other events across the university to explore more what they call plant forward options. And they didn't have that before we asked them to do it. And now I'll go to all kinds of other university events and I'll think, oh, that's one of those things they piloted for us.
And that's what I really want to take a moment to acknowledge, is that both of the theological schools are embedded, so that they're different than some of our other schools, but you have been leaders on your campuses of helping them envision ways. And so I just hope others are listening to ways that it isn't just the work within your school, but if you're in the university context, the work that you do then in setting, sort of moral examples and making things happen that then the rest of the university benefits from. So these are really great examples. So Sarah, do we have some questions coming in?
We have a few, and I would, one of the questions is from an anonymous viewer who asked, what are the biggest challenges that you face as deans doing this work? And so you might want to think about that. And also a question is that we can direct to all of us is, what is your hope for Green Seminary Initiative 2017 and beyond? This is a network, so this is our network. Obviously, while our deans are thinking about their biggest challenges, I would say that, with the new launch of our seminary environmental certification program, we're working very closely with the schools that are already enrolled in that. Currently, we're accepting applications up until April 22nd for any additional schools that are interested in enrolling in that 3-year process, and we're going to be working very closely with them as they apply the standards that we've set up in each of these 5 focus areas. And we see that as a very transformative and exciting process for seminaries to go through. So that's going to be a priority of ours, but we're interested in hearing what your hopes are, Laurel, as co-founder, and Gail and Javier, what your hopes might be for Green Seminary Initiative. But let's go ahead and hear from you what some of the biggest challenges are that you face as deans doing this work.
Well, I think that two initial challenges come to mind for me, and first one is difficult. It has to do with our integrity, because I would say it's about our investment in resources that we know are harmful to the environment, and yet we remain institutionally dependent on the resources that they provide. And so it's a conversation that is taking place, for example, on our campus about where our endowment is invested and on how we begin a process of divestment from industries that are not aligned with our institutional commitments. And being an embedded school, that's a bigger challenge, I would think, than, say, a freestanding seminary. But it's a conversation that we're committed to having, but also recognizing that that's an area where we need to do significant work. And as the person who loses sleep, most nights about the financial sustainability of our enterprise, I wrestle with this. And I can't claim purity, but that's a challenge. That's a challenge. And so for me, how are we true leaders with integrity on this issue is something that I think that we need more work on. The second challenge that I would say may sound minor, but it's been regular for me. And it's some of our commitments around our eating together at Drew has provoked conversations by certain communities that are represented here that say that the way we eat privileges one group and one culture over and against others. And so while that's a challenge, what I love about that is that the conversation is bigger than just around environmental concerns, but it's a cross-cultural conversation. It's about, racial group and ethnic group traditions and global traditions, and it becomes rich, often tense. Intense is a better word rather than tense. Intense, but I think it's an important conversation that we have regularly here about how do we have these commitments, but at the same time honor the places and the ways in which, especially when culinary traditions express so much of who you are as a people, how can we continue to honor that while at the same time, keep certain commitments to environmental concerns.
Those are challenges. Gail?
It's related. I was going to say, I think one of the biggest challenges is being in really old buildings that you absolutely know would not pass any energy audit that anybody ever tried to conduct. But also being not being in control of your building, because it's not your building, it's the university's building. And so I find that to be a kind of daily hitting one's head up against, oh, we can say all this and we can do all this and I can do all this at home, but I can't do it here. And, you know, it's the day when the heat's on and it's not that cold, so you have to open the window to let the heat out. That's so environmentally sound. And, but so I think that's a challenge, is to, I mean, it's related to resources, and it is, you know, in a fantasy world, would all our buildings be, you know, living buildings and LEED certified? Yes. And, but we're not the only people with that fantasy, so we're not the only people looking for that kind of support. But it is a challenge to live consistently these commitments in all aspects of an institution's life.
Yeah, no, I have become much more of an expert on HVAC systems, because I'm usually the one that someone at Drew comes and complains to when the windows are open, the heat's too high. And, you know, it's a good thing I'm married to an engineer, because I learned a lot about these things. Thank you for articulating those challenges. And I also want to offer ways that you hope theological education will move forward, as we talk also about the future of the Green Seminary Initiative and what we might be doing for schools. So just to open the floor on either of those ways, because you all are recognized leaders and others listen to you, and I hope they will get to hear you from this webinar.
Well, one of the things that I hope for, and I guess from the initiative and from all of us who participate, you know, so I don't want to put it on you all per se, but on the member institutions and the institutions that share these commitments and theological education more broadly. So I would love to see a standard on this.
With ATS.
For ATS.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would really be nice to actually have it kind of publicly recognized that not only is it essential for theological education, but that it is essential for the places where our students are going and for the world that they are called, for which they are called to care. And that ecological literacy in a form of, right now, it seems even more, that seems superly crucial, but also linked with the kind of scientific literacy. They're not linked.
Right.
They're linked. And religious leaders are uniquely positioned to be able to lead those conversations, because they're not scientists. You know, that's not what they do by grade. But if they can communicate to wherever they are in ministry that how crucial it is for every aspect of living into the fullness of God's hopes for creation. And so I would like to see, you know, even more of that. And we've had some good curricular examples, I think, today, but to see more of that. And I think also to help work to, my hope is that we will continue to focus on where our graduates go with this and what they do with this. Once upon a time, not all that long ago, but it seemed, I think maybe in the 50s, or a little after the 50s, it seemed it was an unheard of thing for a church to have a youth minister. That seemed a radical departure. Why would you have a youth minister? Well, now, that's business as usual. So I would like to see comparably. So if now it seems, why would you have an eco-justice minister? Why would you have a creation care minister? Why would you have an environmental sustainability minister? That 15 years from now, that will be the norm.
What a wonderful vision. And thank you for lifting up that challenge that I think many in theological education face, and that is, how do we bring in the science, and how do we educate our students on the science and what's good science and what's not? Because I know a lot of schools have been working on that, even when they don't name it as eco or environmental. They have been trying to bring in science. Javier?
If I had a dream around this, or a hope for theological education, it would be something along the lines of can we innovate together to the extent that we that our collaboration as schools on these matters becomes more important than our need to be competitors with one another. So that could we care enough about these issues and these matters that we not only focus on how we make our own respective individual schools the place or the one that's got as many possible resources, but that we could collectively share our resources in a way that that the wealth that we have is available to people beyond those who are registered as our students. Can we envision the day where you could actually earn a degree by studying at both Wake and Drew or other places, because you will be able to gain a greater sense of knowledge and capacity to lead by something like that, rather than just doing it in one of the schools respectively. I know, and I don't have an answer or a solution for how that is, but it seems to me that the crisis is important enough that it's worth our collective energy and thought around how that might be possible.
Thank you.
That is beautifully and perfectly articulated. We spend so much time right now competing with one another that we don't, and we operate kind of ironically for focusing on creation and ecology. We operate out of a scarcity model.
Yes, that's right. And this is what
instead of an abundance model, if there's enough to go, or there's enough for all of us to be doing this.
Right. And I agree. And I think that GSI has been such an amazing leader already, but that this might be one way where you could lead us into an even better future as well.
We have been very gratified at how all the people at our various related institutions have really seen wanting others to come on board, and certainly the first certification group has been doing that very much, to see this as our collective enterprise, because we all. And I just want to say, I do think there will be some opportunities for ATS to be listening. I think some of the accreditation standards are up for consideration, and I know that many folks are in various places where they can bring this up. And Gail, I particularly appreciate how you did a webinar with us for deans and leaders at ATS a few years back. And so I just want to encourage folks to not only be listening for those opportunities, but if you're an alum of a school, let that school know that you care about this and that you wish it had been part of your education at that school. Because what we need is schools to envision, if you've been helping us vision, how this is part of what it means to do theological education, so that those voices are percolating from many places. Because ATS listens when it's coming from schools, just as schools listen when it's coming from ATS, which is what I heard Gail saying a little bit ago. Sarah, do we have other questions that have come in?
Well, in a moment or two, we'll allow our panelists and yourself to have a couple of minutes with a closing statement or closing thoughts. But we had one question simply asking if this initiative will continue via additional webinars. Currently, we don't have any additional ones scheduled, but there is a lot of interest in this, and we will see what topics we would like and speakers we can get. For instance, we had a webinar on building and grounds where we talked about 5 broad areas: water and energy and waste and materials and grounds. We might want to get just speak about water for a whole hour. We had a webinar on education, which was very broad and wonderful and a rich conversation, but we may want to have discipline-focused topics. So just talk about ethics for an hour, just talk about biblical studies, just talk about theology, homiletics for an hour. So we've had this 5-part series focusing on each of our 5 focus areas, and we can get more specific as we move along and get more people involved. I think it might be, I think that's all of the questions that we received from participants. So Laurel, shall we move towards closing statements?
Sure. Gail had something to say there on the webinars, I think.
Well, I was just thinking it might be, it would have to be, one would have to do it carefully, but it might really be interesting to talk to some students in a webinar.
And we did have one student on our community life webinar, but absolutely.
But I mean on this, more broad, just their reflections, or a recent graduate of an institution.
Absolutely.
On their reflection on how it's already having an impact on what they're doing.
Yes.
Great. And certainly for those of you who are listening, we love to hear ideas from you as to what you want. I know as a faculty member that I have gained tremendously from listening to all these webinars, because as a faculty member, I'm not just a teacher, but I'm also a participant in shaping and forming the institution. So learning buildings and grounds and all those things. I think one of the things that we would encourage everybody, and I learned this from my experience at Drew, and it's reflected in the 5 focused areas, is that when you do put together committees to work on this, you really need folks from staff and from facilities. They are the people that make the institution go in some ways. You need folks in the administration, you need faculty, and you need students. You need all those voices bringing in their different perspectives of an institution that then can help it be this much larger vision than just, how do we change our curriculum, or can we add a class, or whatever like that. So I would encourage, certainly in all my years at Drew, I think, I'm there for 23 years now, and I've worked on this kind of institutional transformation. I got here to several faculty already committed to it, but I have gained so much by being on the committee with folks from across the university in administrative positions and in facilities positions. That's really been rich for me and helped me figure out how to be more of an institutional transformative agent, but also then helped me sort of communicate that information to my students, because they go into churches or into organizations where it's not just about the sort of content or the preaching, it's about the whole institution and how it teaches and speaks also. So, to be able to talk about what you can do with your lights sometimes is as much a part of the curriculum as, what text we should look at. Closing thoughts from you, Javier or Gail? You did a great job with some closing thoughts a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I was like, wait.
Yeah, you all and you were sort of, definitely giving us the big picture statement.
I don't know that I have anything that I would add other than to just express my gratitude for Green Faith's leadership on this, and for your commitment to just kind of bringing the conversation from the fringes to the center of theological education. I think it's so critical, and I don't think there's anything more important work than the kind of work that you're doing. And so just my gratitude to you for that.
And I need to express, all of us at the Green Seminary Initiative need to express our gratitude to Drew for hosting it. for, supporting grad students to work on it, for supporting my work on it, because it often takes me away from things I might do for Drew that I'm trying to do for the larger. So I want to echo that gratitude back, both to Green Faith and to Drew for helping us. We are now going into our 10th year.
Mhm.
And so that's something that we were celebrating at this recent conference. Is we dreamed about these kind of webinars and these kind of programs and to have staff, and here we are. So I think the future is bright.
And my closing remarks were going to be to thank Laurel.
But I want to thank you.
You should have jumped in first.
But Gail knows there's been many an AAR where we go off, sort of on the sideline and we're talking and I'm getting advice from her. So I really have appreciated having leaders to go to. And of course, we need to thank, since we're in our grateful gratitude moment, Sarah and Abby and Fletcher and all the folks at Green Faith who have enabled us just to do these webinars and have this technology. Certainly, if we relied on me for technological innovation, we would still be having conference calls probably. maybe I could get to anyway.
Oh, that's great. Well, I think we're winding down, Laurel. Shall we conclude?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for participating. For Laurel and Gail and Javier, this has been a great discussion, and you've given us a lot to think about. As mentioned earlier, this is our final webinar in our 5-part series. Each topic was selected based on these 5 focus areas of the Green Seminary Initiative. To those listening, if we did not get to your question, or if you think of one later, send it to us by email, and we'll share that email with you on the next slide. Finally, if you or your school are interested in learning more about applying for our seminary environmental certification program, we have information on our website about that. I actually have a recording on our website of an orientation webinar that we did that can answer your questions about that. Or again, we're glad to talk to you by phone or email. We'll be accepting applications up until April 22nd, Earth Day. So we're looking forward to a new cohort of schools participating in that certification program. At Green Seminary Initiative, we feel that there is important work ahead as we equip the religious leaders of today and tomorrow for the ecological challenges facing our world. We'd like to stay in touch with you via our website, our Facebook, or email. So please send us your questions and comments, and let's make this a great network. Thanks again for joining us today.
Actually, I have one more thing. Just also that we now, as a result of a loose grant that is helping us not only with the certification program, but also we are working with the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development and Methodist School of Theology of Ohio to put on regional conferences over these next 3 years. We just had a really rich one in Washington, and the one in the fall will be in Ohio. So those are designed for faculty and staff at institutions to come and learn more. So keep a lookout on our Facebook page and our website, both for recordings from past ones, but also the possibilities for new ones. Thanks to Luce, we have money to support the travel and also the lodging and food for people to come to these conferences. And the 2 that have happened so far have been really rich and fertile cross sort of fertilization, as we've had, participants from multiple religious traditions, and then multiple traditions within Christianity, including Orthodox and Catholic and various Protestants. So just keep a lookout for those, and just that leads me to a moment of gratitude for Beth Norcross, one of the other co-founders of the Green Seminary Initiative, and now Tim Van Meter, who is really taking the lead on helping those conferences and coordinating the efforts between Green Faith and Green Seminary Initiative and ICSD. So keep looking at our Facebook page. We post lots of things, opportunities, books, films. We're glad to broadcast your institution's events so that other people know. Thanks.
Thank you, Laurel.
You.
Thanks again.
It really has